As February BTO and SBF exercise has come to a close, let's discuss what are the application rate looks like. Let's talk about which towns are popular, which ones not so popular, and what can we learn from this launch. Honestly, there are so many surprises in this launch that I wasn't expecting, and I believe that some of them are because of the different new rules that now have taken into effect. For example, for both BTO and SBF, now you can only apply for the town and flat type only, but that's pretty much it. You can't pick a specific project. On top of that, there's a penalty waiting if you do not book a flat when invited. Other than that, applicants who receive a queue number from the previous BTO or SBF exercise cannot apply to another launch until their flat booking appointment to avoid duplication. And of course, there's that standard plus and prime classification. And apparently, the mix of all of the above has resulted in a very interesting application rate. Let's start with SBF. If I ask you to guess which town has the highest application rate for a 4-room flat for the first-timer families, what would be your guess? Queenstown? Kalang? No, the answer is Pasir Ris. And the second place goes to Hougang, while the third place goes to Serangoon. I was like, what is going on? Ang Mo Kio's application rate is only 1.3, which is even lower than Bukit Batok. Ang Mo Kio is seriously second to last, only beating Tengah. Is it because people don't want to live in Ang Mo Kio anymore? No, it's a mature area with plenty of amenities and relatively close to the CBD. Of course, many people want to live there. Is it because there's no interesting SBF there? Not true. In fact, Pineville at Ang Mo Kio was offered as part of this year's SBF, and because it was a replacement flat for SIRS, they somehow still have over 400 4-room flats unbooked yet. My guess is that people hesitate to apply for Ang Mo Kio SBF because it also has a number of repurchased flats which are significantly older. When I say older, I mean like with 40 to 50 years lease left. People are scared if they get a bad queue number, then they might need to pick between taking the penalty or buying a super old flat, which cannot last until the youngest owner or occupier's golden age. I'm guessing that to a certain extent, this is also the same case for Bishan and Toa Payoh, where although the application rate is not as low as Ang Mo Kio, but the numbers are relatively muted. Let's compare it with last year's SBF exercise for mature towns. As you can see, across the board, the numbers drop. Of course, there could be many reasons for it. It could be because this year's SBF is one of the largest with over 5,000 flats offered in many locations, so the buyers' interests are spread across different towns. But I still believe that the rule changes are also part of the reason for this drop. We also see similar trends for 3-room SBF, where mature towns don't necessarily get a higher application rate. Interestingly, for 5-room SBF, Pasir Ris again takes the crown with significantly much higher application rate compared to other areas. I think what happened at Pasir Ris is that the town has a very limited supply of SBF, but demands are through the roof, hence the numbers are crazy like this. What about 2-room flexi? For seniors, Pasir Ris, Tampines, and Bishan are the favorite in this year's SBF exercise. We can see that there's a high demand for 2-room flexi flats from seniors because even Tengah's application rate is like 3.5. But it is the chart for first-timer singles that is really astonishing. As you know, starting this year, singles now can apply for 2-room flexi in any towns and not only the non-mature town to help keeping up with the demands. But I think the singles still need further help on housing because if you see the numbers here, those are not the numbers of flats. Those are really the application rate for first-timer singles who applied for 2-room flexi in this year's SBF. When you see 208 for Ang Mo Kio, that means there are 208 singles eyeing for a 2-room flexi in Ang Mo Kio. Bedok, 285. Oh my god, 285 singles trying to get a 2-room flexi in Bedok. To be fair, if we compare the application rate versus the previous years for the same town, by opening up mature towns for singles, it does help to alleviate some of the pressure. The application rate for Sengkang last year was 587, and this year it goes down to 83.5. Is it better? Yeah, but it's still a very long shot for the applicants. So I think there's still a pent-up housing demand for singles that needs to be addressed. If you have any ideas or suggestions on how HDB can help the singles community more, please comment down below because I want to hear your thoughts. Now let's discuss the BTO application rate. For 4-room flat, as predicted, Tanjung Ru Parkfront is very popular. Sterling Horizon at Queenstown is the runner-up, but the demand is not as strong as predicted. I think there are several factors here. The fact that across Sterling Horizon there are 2 other BTOs that are currently being built but with standard classification, which I've mentioned before, this makes Sterling Horizon pale in comparison. Another factor is that the number of SBF in mature town, providing many options for potential buyers. We can also see a similar trend for the second-timer families, but the numbers of course are more staggering. But then what do you expect, right? The reality is second-timer do not get a lot of flat allocation, hence the competition tends to be very high. 5-room flat application rate for first-timer families are relatively under control. It seems like the families who applied here will have a good chance to get a flat. Second-timer, as usual, the rate is higher. However, I noticed that Yishun BTO kept getting higher application rate versus Woodlands BTO, which is interesting. I'm guessing that this is because people are still favoring the Chencharu area versus Woodlands North that still need some development to catch up. What about 2-room flexi? Most seniors apply to the Tanjung Ru Parkfront project compared to other projects, which honestly kinda surprises me. Initially, I thought Sterling Horizon will be more popular for seniors due to its proximity to healthcare facilities and the fact that the amount of 2-room flexi offered there are significantly more in terms of proportion, etc. But this goes to show a prediction is just a prediction. Similar with singles. People still opted the Kallang BTO more than the Queenstown BTO. I wonder why that is. I was always under the impression that 2-room flexi is just for own stay and people who buy them do not necessarily think about reselling them down the line. So I might be wrong because I thought Sterling Horizon downside is more about the issue when reselling it. Comment down below if you know why Tanjung Ru Parkfront is more in demand versus Sterling Horizon at Queenstown. I want to hear your thoughts. If we compare between BTO and SBF application rate for the same town, this confirms the hypothesis that people still prefer to get a flat that is almost ready or even has collected keys because the application rate for SBF is higher than BTO for the same town. This is a consistent trend that we can also see for the 2-room flexi application rate for first-timer singles. So after all of these confusing charts, what are the conclusions? Number 1, SBF rules needs to be revisited. I think the rules for SBF really need fine-tuning. From the data that I've shown, clearly, young couples hesitate to apply for SBF if they know there's a chance they have to pick between being penalized or buying a super old flat that cannot outlast them. The rules have to be fine-tuned to consider the remaining lease. The second finding is that singles definitely need more housing solutions. The data speaks for itself. Opening up the possibility for singles to buy 2-room flexi in mature areas did help in some ways, but from this year's data, we can see that the application rate is still on an unhealthy level. I mean, even to get a flat at Tengah, 57 singles have to compete to get that one flat. That's brutal. I understand that the government wants to prioritize families more, but I really do hope that more can be done to help singles because at the end of the day, they are Singaporeans as well. The next conclusion that I have is that you have a higher BTO chances if there's an SBF launch at the same time. For those who wants to buy a BTO, statistically, it seems that you will have a higher chance if you apply for a BTO when there is an SBF exercise at the same time. Why? Well, naturally, many of the public interest will be diverted to the SBF exercise, hence reducing the competition for BTO because most people prefer a shorter waiting time. Another moral of the story is that SBF might have hidden gems. Forget about the stigma that only low floors offered in SBF because this year, we see a lot of flats on high floors and in good locations as well being offered. Another thing that I've learned is that SBF competition is more unpredictable. In real estate, you always hear that location is the king. But as we can see from the statistics, there are non-mature towns who somehow got a higher application rate versus mature towns. Like, who would have thought that more people would apply to Punggol SBF versus Ang Mo Kio SBF? That is really unexpected, right? I guess the moral of the story is, if you really like a certain town, just apply for it. Because who knows, you might get lucky and get the flat that you want. Do you have any other insight from this year's SBF and BTO exercise? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!